Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Yorkshire Gamers Reet Big Wargames podcast. And today we are on episode 34. And this is being recorded on the 2nd of December 2022 to come out later on this afternoon. And today I'm going to be speaking with Rohan Saravanamuttu. And Rohan has just released a book called Leipzig The Battle of the Nations, a Wargamer's Guide to that very battle. So we'll be talking, as we always do, about Rohan's history and the various bits and pieces before we get on to the book itself. So, a little bit of housekeeping before we start, as usual. And tomorrow will be the 3rd of December. And if you're local to me in Pudsey, there's a Wargames show run by the Wakefield and District Wargames Society at Pudsey. It's a lovely little show. It's not partisan. It's not a huge salute thing, but it's a nice, friendly little show. So if you are in the area, pop in and say hello. I shall be there with my Italian Wars game that I had on Fiasco. If you are listening to this and you are able, I don't often beg on this program. Well, I do, to be honest. Um, if you have opportunity, if you could follow the podcast, if you could leave a like or review on Podbean or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you follow it, just to increase the visibility of the podcast. The more reviews, the more likes, the more follows it gets, the more it moves up the charts and the viewing figures, etc. And more people get to listen, which is a good or a bad thing, depending on your opinion, I suppose. The podcast passed 50,000 downloads a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember whether I mentioned it on here, so I'm going to say it again because that is absolutely amazing. 50,000 people listened once and turned off, I could understand, but they keep coming back, and you're very, very welcome to keep coming back. And 30,000 of those, just over 30,000, have been on audio, and 20,000 the visual version on YouTube. And I did a recent survey on Twitter and Facebook, and it seems about 60%, 60 to 70% of you listen to them on audio, and the other 33, well, the other 30 or so listen on YouTube, depending on how they're set up at home. And a lovely 4% of you do both. I love you. I love you. Thank you very much for doing it twice. The episodes at the moment are coming out at quite a fast pace, once every 2 weeks, which is how I started originally. It is quite difficult to do, and I can feel the boards creaking a little bit. But I wanted to catch up on my extremely extensive list of guests who are coming on, and there's another two episodes planned in December. More of that at the end of the show, and then two in January, and then from February onwards, I should be returning to my 2 and 5 week, so second and fifth week of each month. So that's a little bit of news for you. So it's time to get on with the show and speak to Rohan. And we had a lovely chat. I was able to edit the episode, apart from these spoken bits at the start, on my way down to and back from Bristol, where my lad got his graduation for his degree in law. So congratulations, Kieran. Top effort, mate. Very proud of you. So that's there's no sounds of trains in the background, you'll be glad to know. So without further ado, here's the interview. Well, hello and welcome to the interview section of the Yorkshire Gamer podcast. And after the chaos of the catch-up episode with three guests, I'm back to my normal format. And today's guest is no stranger to the big game. With over 40 years of pushing lead under his belt, he was inspired by the sadly recently departed Christopher Duffy and David Chandler to embark on a lifelong Napoleonic journey. Like many of my guests, the Wargames Holiday Centre has been a huge influence on his style of gaming, leading him to form his own big battalions group to go big himself a couple of times a year. just released a book with Helion on recreating the biggest battle of the Napoleonic Wars. And for those who don't know, that's Leipzig. And with the scenarios using hundreds of battalions and squadrons, it's definitely not for the faint-hearted. Well, that's exactly what the show is all about. So let's speak to the latest guest on the Yorkshire podcast. Let's give a big warm welcome to Rohan Saravanamuttu.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Brilliant. And pronunciation okay?
Yes.
Excellent. For a Yorkshireman, many people say that the English is my second language. So I'm happy to get any name right, to be honest. Have you ever been on a podcast before, Rohan?
No, it's my first time.
Oh, brilliant. Well, welcome. We've had quite a few new people to podcasting during the course of the shows. And I think you've listened to a few, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Enjoyed those.
Good. Well, it's your turn now. And as you probably know, we like to put everybody under a little bit of pressure at the start. And that is to summarise their wargaming history in 4 minutes. Have you done a bit of prep?
Yeah, I've got some notes if I remind myself.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which way is best so far. Some people who've made no notes have done it really well. Others have absolutely destroyed it and messed it up. And then same with some people have made too many notes. So let's see how you get on, mate.
All right.
I'll press the button now and off you go.
Okay. All right. Well, like many people, it started as a young child playing with toy soldiers. And then as I've got a bit older, progressed to the old Airfix models, the 20 mil World War II, Napoleonic, and American War of Independence, which I like the uniforms. And then eventually, as a young teenager, found a copy of the Airfix rules, which I think were written by Bruce Quarry, and had a go at proper wargaming, but on my bedroom floor with my younger brother. And then I sort of drifted away from that. When I went to university, I joined the Wargames club there, the University of Kent. But that was mainly board gaming, so very little figure gaming. So I did that for a few years there. And then had a break. And then in my early 20s or mid 20s, I moved to Birmingham for work. And I joined the Birmingham Wargames Society. And they were in the 1980s a big thriving club, over 30 members, and got introduced to different ranges of wargaming, different periods. But it was mainly the Napoleonic period that attracted me, and I started collecting 25 mil Napoleonics there. And it was with that club that I was introduced to the Wargames Holiday Centre, which at that time was up in Scarborough, run by Peter Gilder. And the first sight of that table blew my mind away. So this is what I want to do. So that was smitten by that. And then in later years, I moved down to London when I was 28. And I still kept in touch with the Birmingham Club and gamed with them. Also joined a group who used to do Greek spiel in Bill Leeson's cottage. Bill was the guy who translated the Ricewich rules into English and published them. I did a bit of that with him. And then with a conversation with a friend, Jeff Isles, we decided that there was a gap in that the south of England could do with a equivalent of the Wargames Holiday Centre. So we think we would try and emulate that and set up the big battalions. So it's a similar sort of thing, but on a slightly smaller scale. We're doing one-day games. We had to hire a room for the day, and it was a huge logistical challenge to get all the kit there, terrain, figures, boards, get it set up before people arrived, run the game, and then pack it all up again. But yeah, we put on some big historical games, all Napoleonic games there. And then a little while later, I moved house and acquired a big garage and Wargames room where I could put up a big table there. So I ran games there for a bit. But we stopped doing the big battalions format, which was sort of semi-commercial. And I was, from that point, I just held games for friends by invitation rather than advertising. And then about 5 years ago, I retired from my job and I did an MA in the history of war at King's College, London. And while there, I did the module on conflict simulation, which is basically war games design, run by Professor Phil Sabin. And the task there was to design a board game based on a battle or historical campaign. Then through that, I got involved in an annual conference, which for professional war gamers from all over the world, was helping with the admin. But I got to go to the conference. And there I took part in some mega games. The first day of the conference is usually a mega game. And then the later 2 days were different aspects of professional wargaming. So it's mainly people from the Ministry of Defence, the Army, academics, and a few hobbyists. So that was very interesting. Recently, I suppose with COVID, my gaming at home got shut down. But I've been gaming with friends, and there's recently a new historical society, the Newbury Historical Study Association, have been putting on games in Newbury. So I've been going to a few of those. So that's the bulk of my wargaming history to date.
No worries. The timer didn't work, so you got an extra
minute.
which is brilliant. But we'll explore many of those things that you've just talked about in a little bit more detail as we go through the show. And the first thing that jumps out there for me was your mention early on of the Bruce Quarry Napoleonic rules. A must for many a young lad back in those days. What are your memories of the rules now, looking back on them?
Well, I think looking back, I thought they're overly complicated. I remember there were rules for cutting away dead horses from your horse batteries if shot at it. So it was pretty complex set of rules, but they worked, and it was the first set of rules I attempted to use. So yeah, it got me gaming.
And did that? One of the big things about the quarry rules is the national characteristics and those huge big tables with all the different factors for. How has that influenced your game? Because it's been a big influence to me. How has that influenced your gaming going forward? Have you left that behind, or is it still something you like to see?
I suppose the national characteristics they were always pretty controversial, but I don't know. They, of course, it's a bit arbitrary, but they have a certain flavour. I mean, at the moment, I tend to use the Grand Manor rules primarily, and they have not similar, but they have their own sort of national characteristics. So all the armies are slightly different. The capabilities are slightly different between different armies, which I think is pretty realistic because they did have different doctrines, different training, different qualities of weapons. So I think there is a legitimate place for having national characteristics of armies. It's not purely jingoism. Although there's an element of that. I think in Bruce Quarry's rules, the British were always a bit superhuman. The Austrians a bit cowardly.
Yeah. Plus one for all Yorkshire regiments. It all depends on where you come from, doesn't it? And what your bias is, because I've had many stories on this podcast about Peter Gilder being slightly in favour of the French. Unless he was playing the British in the Peninsula, and then he would be in favour of the British. So I think it's something that many people not suffer from, but they like to see their nation pushed forward a little bit. So I can see where that's coming from. But I think they give a nice flavour. A lot of modern rules, everything seems to be quite bland, and an infantry battalion's an infantry battalion, regardless of where it comes from. And do you like those little nuances between different nations to give that flavour?
Yeah, I do. I think it's because I think it feels historical. And it can lead to an interesting game where you haven't got exactly equal or very similar forces on each side.
Mm.
So it gives quite a lot of variation. Yeah, for
So
instance, at the moment
yeah.
I've been researching the Russians in recent years, and
Mm.
in some rules, for example, their musketry is downgraded, but I think that is legitimate. So there are historical reasons why that's the case in terms of their training, ammunition problems, poor quality or multiple types of musket in the same regiment, and their doctrine. So, which was to go in with the bayonet, not stand and have musketry duels.
Yeah.
So I think all of these differences are, perfectly right to be there.
Yeah, that's one thing that I remember reading was the different calibers of musket within in a unit, which
Yeah,
must have caused horrendous supply issues,
yeah,
or but maybe they just didn't bother and said, right, charge. No firing. Well,
yeah.
that's great. That's good to hear. I always like to get people's opinions on that. So that's really good. You mentioned a setup at home. Have you still got that?
I've still got the garage, so I tend to put my garage in my car in there in the winter, but pack the table away. But yeah, I effectively closed it down for COVID, and I haven't got into the habit of putting it back up again. So I will do in the spring.
So
Yeah,
when your car's not in there, what does it look like?
well, it's I can put up a table that's, I think it's 24 feet by 12 feet, so
Wow.
pretty big table with some gaps in between to walk around. It's a bit cramped, but yeah, so I can put up games there for up to some 5 people aside. So fairly big games. Yeah, so I run the big battalions games there for a bit, but and then just had it as informal games amongst friends. But so yeah, it's a luxury to have that. It's
No, it sounds like a great setup and something I think most of us would love to have. Um,
mm.
and have you been involved in the club scene? You mentioned being in the Birmingham club and still been in contact with them. Have you been a club gamer, or does the size of games you tend to play
Not
tend?
not really. I mean, it's since moving down to London many years ago, I've tended to just gamed either with the big battalions or just groups of friends.
Yeah,
So I haven't belonged to a regular club. I think the hobby is probably bigger than people realise. They sort of look around the number of clubs and the people in clubs, but I think there's quite a lot of us who game just amongst groups of friends. So occasional trips to the Wargames Holiday Centre, and there's this new place at Newbury I've been going to, which is running. It's a partly historical setup. So there's a talk before the games, and then a game afterwards, and just gaming in mates' houses.
yeah. I think there's a very large amount of people who do that. My last guest to do with a single episode, Chris Flowers. I don't know if you know Chris. Um,
No,
yeah, he's very much the same. He's got a setup at home. He has people to come round, and with that, you don't particularly need a club.
yeah,
And I think there's lots and lots of those little silos around the country who get their gaming fix from friends around at houses rather than needing to go to a club.
yeah.
So whereabouts in the UK are you at the based at the moment?
Yeah, I live in Barnet, which is
Mm.
just north edge of London.
So you're not far away from Basingstoke's the other way around, isn't it? Where the holiday
Yeah,
centre is. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Not you're closer than I am. Put it that
yeah.
way. So, did you ever get involved in putting games on at shows? Did you ever get into that scene at all?
Well, yes. I mean, when me and Jeff Isles first started the big battalions, we used to put on some demonstration games at shows, and that was a means to recruit people to come to our battalion games.
Yeah.
So we tended to go to we went to Salute a few years running. We put on a game, I think, once at the Birmingham Wargames show, Midland Militaire. It was a big show they used to run in the
Yeah,
Midlands,
remember that.
and we might have put on a game. I think we put on a game at Selwig for a couple of years running. So yeah, we put on some demo games, sort of showcasing the sort of stuff we did. Obviously on a smaller scale to do for a show. In fact, I think the very first one we did at Salute, we won a prize for best participation game, or one of the prizes, I think perhaps best or second best, I can't remember. But it's nice. It was nice to do that, and it was creating a different skill, I suppose, of liaising with the public and trying to run a game at the same time.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely a technique. We've talked about it a few times of keeping people who are watching interested as well as keeping the game progressing, and it's a bit like being a magician, isn't it, really? Distracting the audience while pulling the rabbit out of the hat at the same time. So
because you want to talk to the public, but they don't want to just see a static display. They want to see something happening as well.
Exactly. We're going to spend most of the episode talking about Napoleonics. So we'll just set that aside for a second. Is there anything else in wargaming, that periods, scales, etc., that you are into apart from Napoleonics?
Well, I suppose I dabble in other periods. Apart from figure gaming, I do a bit of board gaming.
Yeah.
And in board gaming, it could be any period. I see you've got Kingmaker on your back shelf there, which is
yes. classic.
Which is a game I've got, and still once in a while get that out. Still enjoy that.
Yeah.
Memoir 44 for Second World War stuff.
Yes.
And some, I guess, non-wargaming board games I quite enjoy. In terms of other periods, I've dabbled in American Civil War, ancients, generally joining in. I don't have collections of my own, but joining other people's games. Medieval. I mean, if I was going to start collecting another period, it would probably be the medieval period, maybe Wars of the Roses, sort of late medieval, which is an interesting period historically and very colourful on the tabletop.
Yeah, well, if you've seen my Italian War stuff, you'll know that there's plenty of colour in that late medieval, early Renaissance period. It's a big favourite of mine as well. I have to say. Well, it's good to see you do a few board games. It's something that we've not really talked about on the podcast before. And have you played like the old SPI games where the hex battles, which I found those quite complicated, and I haven't done one for a long time.
Yeah, well, I suppose I used to. When I was days in the sort of 80s, I was at university, late 70s, 80s. That's when sort of SPI hex games were in their zenith, and that's what was available. And I used to do a bit more of that sort of gaming then. But I think the hobby's moved on since then. It's apart from sometimes it's the rules being quite complex, but also quite fiddly. Trying to move little counters on hexes, and some of the bigger games were quite ridiculous. Where you've got Eastern games trying to cover the Eastern Front with hundreds and hundreds of counters.
One of my friends, Ian, was quite big into them, and he managed to persuade us to look at the map, but never actually play the game because the maps were so big. It was effectively you didn't need to buy any wallpaper because you just put these maps up on the wall. They were so big, and I think is it the war in North Africa that's the SPI game is supposed to be the biggest ever. And it sells for thousands now. If you can find it. Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. I mean, I've heard of the Eastern Front ones being massive, but not the North African ones. No. Well, I've not seen those. No.
Yeah, it's got quite a reputation.
Probably, I think some of those are just unplayable. But I guess if you can, people who are into the detail, you can get lost and submerged in the detail, which some people like. I think in practice they're unplayable. And and I suppose the hobby moved on to having area movement rather than fiddly hexes, which is much easier to deal with.
I'm looking behind me because there's a game I'm going to ask you about. I need to find me It was I can't see it at the moment. It's massive
Yeah.
as well. Empires at Arms. It was a Napoleonic board game.
Oh, that, yes, I've got that. It's one of my favourite games.
Oh, yes,
Um,
we enjoy that.
I mean, I've played some scenarios with a friend, but the whole campaign, I've tried to do solitaire a couple of times, and
Mm,
it's very absorbing doing it solitaire.
yeah,
Trying to get about 7 people together to commit that level of time to it
yeah.
is pretty impractical. But I thought, yeah, one day perhaps I'll achieve that.
Yeah, I think
uh,
it's definitely a goal to. We used to play it quite a lot when we were students, and quite clearly we should have been studying. I appreciate that, uh, but we've all done all right in life, so maybe those games
yeah.
helped us a little bit in other ways.
Yeah, I think the complexity, dealing with complexity, is it's good training for other things. Actually, it's
Yeah, I've had a few guests on where we've talked about the sort of the unseen side benefits of wargaming, and one of them, Simon Hall, is an extremely successful businessman, and you know the negotiating skills, the strategy skills, the tactic
yeah,
skills, decision making, they're all really useful tools to have in a business world.
yeah. And I think, I mean, in my job, I worked in finance
Mm.
as an accountant, and having to explain some complex stuff to people at meetings. Um, if you can explain the rules of Empire and Arms to people in 15 minutes,
Yeah.
then you could explain high finance to people around the table.
Yeah, yeah, very
Yeah.
similar, very similar. So you also mentioned that when you'd retired from your job, you did a bit of military history or military strategy studying. So it's not something we've had before. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So after retiring, I signed up to do an MA in the history of war at King's College London, which has a big war studies department. And they have links with the military. The same people go around and teach the ministry, the army at Shrivenham at the Staff College. So that was mainly historical, but one of the modules I did was conflict simulation, which run by Professor Phil Sabin,
Mm.
who's known in I think he was a member of the Society of Ancients, so he's known in the sort of ancient wargaming fraternity. So he ran this module, and it was partly learning about the history of wargaming and the techniques. But instead of writing, I had to write some essays, but instead of writing a dissertation, what you had to do is design and produce a board game
Oh wow.
based on a historical battle or campaign.
Mm.
So some of what we were learning very practical stuff, how to use computer graphics, and although it's a board game, not a computer game,
Mm.
you'd be using some computer graphics to design the pieces and the board. So you learned some skills there, and then you had to bring it to the class and play test it,
Yeah.
critique each other's games. So I've always fancied designing a game, so
Mm.
that was one of the reasons I chose that particular university because they ran this course there. Yeah, so that was good fun and I learned quite a lot there.
So which
Uh,
game did you do for your dissertation or for
yeah,
your
it was the
project?
Battle of Borodino.
Oh right,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, which is something I had an interest in.
Mm.
You mentioned Christopher Duffy. I
Mm.
first got into the Napoleonic period by reading Christopher Duffy's book on Borodino when I was about 12.
Mm.
And in later years, I think about 20 years ago, I visited Borodino. I went on a battlefield tour, and Borodino was one of the battlefields we visited.
Mm.
In fact, we had 2 days there, one to explore the battlefield and one day to watch the big reenactment there, which the
Oh right,
Russians
good.
do every year.
Mm.
Fascinating battle. And so I've produced the board game, and maybe one day I'll perhaps try and get around trying to publish that, but it's quite a
Yeah.
crowded marketplace.
Yeah, there's lots of games out there, isn't there, in the
Yeah.
board game market.
Mm.
So it's usual at this time of the podcast that we come round to the old Venn diagram of wargaming, and
Yeah.
I've broken the hobby down into wargamer, painter, collector, and historian, and we've had a bit of all of those as we've gone along. But how do you see
Mm.
those different parts fit together for your hobby?
Well, perhaps I don't do very much painting. I
Mm,
I did when I was younger. I did a bit of painting, but I was never very good at it.
mm,
And well, my eyesight's not that great these days to be able to do it. So I think painting would be a very small circle on the Venn diagram. Collecting, I mean, I do have quite a big collection, but I wouldn't call myself a collector for the sake of it.
mm,
I buy stuff that I want to use, so it's not just to stick on a shelf and collect. It's what I've got I like to use. So
mm.
collecting on its own would be a small bit on the Venn diagram. The two big bits, yeah, playing
Yeah.
games and the history.
Mm,
So I think both of those are two big draws, and they feed off each other. So my interest in history drives a desire to war game particular battles,
mm,
and and the war games stimulates a curiosity about history. So
mm.
they feed off each other.
So
Yeah.
when you come to get figures these days, if you still do, are you buying them pre-painted or are you having people paint them for you?
Well, I tend to buy. Well, when I have bought, I tend to buy them second-hand,
Yeah.
pre-painted,
Mm,
and then to get the bulk of them that way, and then to fill in the odd gaps, particular regiments I might want. On the odd occasion, I've had commissioned a particular regiment to be painted for me.
yeah.
Yeah, that's quite expensive, so you limit that to some
The
particular
nice
units.
ones.
Yeah,
And
ones that are hard to get hold of.
yeah, do you then base them all yourself so you've got like a consistent style?
Well, I tend to be tends to be based for the rule set that I use, which in the grand manner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which when the other rule sets, it doesn't necessarily matter how they're based. You can still use other sets of rules with them
Yeah.
for many
Yeah.
rules. It's prefer them to be based in that fashion.
And we're just coming to the end of the first section now, and just like to, do you do much social media at all, Rohan? Are you Facebook, Twitter, that sort of thing?
And not a lot. I mean, I am sort of registered with Facebook, but I don't tend to post stuff.
Mm.
I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to social media. and, um, so, yeah, and also a bit reticent to, you know, boring people with photographs of my dinner and
Yeah, well,
what I've had for breakfast.
the war games section tends to be boring people with pictures of toy soldiers, which
Uh,
doesn't really bore us. So it's not too bad.
yeah.
In fact, we're going to talk about the War Games Holiday Centre in the next section. But you mentioned Peter Gilder. Did you go in the next incarnation with Jerry Elliott and Mike Ingham?
Yes, I mean, so the first time I went up there was Peter Gilder was still running it, but I think it was
Yeah.
towards the end of his career running it. And I carried on going there under Jerry Elliott
Mm.
and Mike Ingham, and also in Basingstoke with Mark
With
Freeth.
Mark, brilliant. Well,
Yeah,
I've had Mark on the podcast, and I've had Jerry on the podcast,
yeah.
and Jerry, I can't believe I persuaded him, but it's fantastic to have had him on. And he actually posted his first post on Facebook yesterday. On
Ah,
I've got a Yorkshire Gamer big war games group, and he posted a picture on there yesterday. So
right.
I'm slowly dragging our generation of gamers onto the internet. So you're most welcome to join the group, Rohan, and post pictures of your
Right,
games.
thanks. I'll try and do that. Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. That's a good point to take a little break here for the audience, and we'll be back in a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen, for our second section when we're going to talk about big games. Well, as you all know, regular listeners, the second part of this podcast is all about big games, and the first question I always ask to my guests when they come on, to see what their opinion is: what does a big game mean to you, Rohan? When you hear that word "big game," what are you thinking of?
Well, I'm thinking big to me is between 4 players a side and 12 players a side, as opposed to mega games. I mean, I have taken part in a few mega games where you've got maybe 100 players, where they tend to be political, military games, quite a lot of role playing, which are. I mean, it's not something I would do often, but it's very
Mm.
interesting to be involved in that from time to time. It's in fact, when I was at conferences at King's College, they ran a consim conference once a year for professional wargamers from around the world. So the first day of that was a mega game, and in fact, one year we had Ben Wallace, the Ministry of Defence, turned
Oh
up
right,
to
yeah,
come and
yeah,
have a look. So he had a chat with people on our table.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's quite high profile, but that's a quite separate from what I do as a hobby, I think. So
Mm.
a big game for me in terms of figure games, yeah, sort of 8 to 12 people.
Mm.
A small game would be, 1 or 2 players aside.
Yeah,
And so I
and
think the size of the game is more to do with the number of people than the scale of the table or the figures. So I would, even if you're using a small scale of figures, if you've got 10 people, I'd still class that as a big game.
yeah. And what's the appeal of a big game for you as opposed to doing a skirmish game or a board game? Well, what is it that drags you to the bigger table?
Well, I think there's several things. I think I've got my interest in history is a desire to refight a historical battle. And by definition, they tend to be big battles, big games. So uh, to do the game justice, you need to do it on a big scale. So there's that historical element. I, I enjoy the social element as well. So if you're
Hmm.
having a game with, 8 or 12 people, it's a social event. It's
Mm.
which is different from just one person aside. So it's fun that way. And I think it's with a big game, certainly you feel perhaps it's more emotional involved. You feel you've been in a battle when you've when you've played all day with that number of people.
Yeah,
Um, it tends to be a bit more, can be a bit more pressured because
yeah.
you've got to play at a certain speed not to slow the game down.
Hmm.
You're under sort of pressure not to let the side down by messing up your area and exposing your neighbour's flank. And the team element. So with a big game, there's generally, say, like a council of war to begin with. So
Hmm.
as a team, you come up with a strategy or plan, what you're going to do, allocating the troops. So there's an extra element there which you don't get in a small game. That team planning and that
Hmm.
level of strategy and the dynamics between players. So you don't need artificial rules to create chaos. The players will create enough chaos on their own.
Yeah, that's something I was talking to with my friend Richard Harris, who runs Legendary Wargames up near me, which is a Wargames holiday centre style thing. And
Oh yes.
one of the criticisms that he brought up that many people put to in the Grand Manor is that lack of a command and control system. And Richard was saying, and it's something I've not thought of before, but it's a very true answer. It's exactly what you said there, Rohan. You've got your command and control issues because Ken is speaking to Rohan. Rohan's doing his thing, and Ken's doing his thing, and they might not necessarily gel together. And then Dave over in the corner's doing something else, and Pete over
Yeah.
there. So that's where your command and control issues come in.
Yeah, the personalities play a part in that, uh,
Yeah,
which is quite realistic. Yeah.
yeah. So are you the solid defense player? Do you like to play Russians and get behind a big redoubt, or are you French cavalry charging over the plains? What's your favourite,
Well,
or what would you say your style was?
well, I like to think of myself as the dashing cavalry officer,
Do you?
but I'm probably more often hiding under the table.
Yeah. So you enjoy being part of a part of a jigsaw, if you like, rather than focusing one on one in a smaller game that's more like a game of chess.
Yeah, yeah, it's more of an event.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to do both, but the bigger game gives you that extra dimension.
Oh,
Um,
well, you're preaching to the converted here, young man. So, um, now you've mentioned earlier on in the first part and in your 4 minutes about going up to the War Games Holiday Centre. I think you said the first time was with the Birmingham club. So
yeah.
where roughly when was that? You say Peter was still in charge up there?
Oh, that would be in I suppose, around about 1985. I suppose, around about that sort of time. Um, so yeah, so it's the tail end of Peter Gilder running it.
Mm.
Um, I think he was still well. I mean, he got ill later on, but
Yeah.
I think he was beginning to lose interest in it because he was busy producing figures as a sideline. I think the connoisseur range of figures or elite. So yeah, he would be not there all. He'd be disappearing out to his shed to cast a few figures, then nipping back in.
Seeing how it was
But yeah,
going.
nice chap, and it
Yeah.
was a good introduction to
Yeah.
that sort of scale.
I do this with everyone who's been. What was your memory of that first time that you saw that room with all the figures laid out on the table?
Well, I think even before the figures, just walking into that room, and, before the figures are on the table, it's just breathtaking, the scale of it.
Mm.
Beautiful terrain as well. And then as the game progresses, to see all the figures on the table, top, yeah, it's just breathtaking. So
And
it's
that's clearly had an effect on you going forwards.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought, well, at the time I thought, wonder, it wouldn't be wonderful to have something like this, but I don't. I mean, I never dreamt that I would get it, but I did eventually get something on a smaller scale, not of that scale, but something similar. So
Mm.
yeah, immensely satisfying to do that.
And what's your kind of favourite memories of being up at the holiday centre?
I think it was the campaign weeks. So it was more under when Mike Ingham was running it. He used to run
Mm.
campaign weeks, and that was again there was another dimension. So it was a big game, but also running
Mm.
a campaign. So we might do the 1813 campaign, for instance,
Mm.
or a Peninsular War campaign, where the outcome of a battle. Well, you would fight a battle, and obviously the casualties would carry forward to the next game. And
Mm.
you do a bit of map movement in between games. So during the week, you might play 3 or 4 battles with a map movement in between. And when you're playing a campaign, your style of play changes quite a bit. You're much more cautious, particularly with cavalry, conscious of not using up your cavalry and your best troops,
Yeah.
and gives you a more realistic feel, a more historical feel. So you understand why Napoleon wouldn't commit the guard at the beginning of every battle.
Yeah.
It's,
In the first skirmish, send the
yeah,
guard in.
it's got to last all week. Yeah. So, um,
And that led you on to do a little bit yourself with the big battalions group. How long did it take to get that together to have enough troops to do something big?
um, I mean, we thought that collecting the troops together would be difficult, but it took a
Mm.
while. But actually, that wasn't the hardest part. Managed to pick up some collections secondhand. Ian Hines was just starting out in his business where
Oh yes,
he
yeah.
trades figures, and
Mm.
I think I was one of his first customers buying a small Prussian army, well, quite a sizable Prussian
Well,
army through him. So that wasn't a huge buying the figures. It was not a huge problem. There were quite a few second-hand
mm.
armies for sale. But the biggest problem was actually trying to find a venue.
Mm.
I mean, church halls tend to get used at the weekends. A lot of rooms have pillars in them, so
Yeah.
to get a space where you can put a big table up without having pillars in the way is difficult.
Who'd have thought holding the roof up was important?
Yeah. And then you want a venue that's got tables as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that it took us quite a while to find a venue. Eventually found a community centre in London, and then we used that for a bit in Crouch End, and later on found a community centre in Hitchin. But that's actually trying to find a venue is the hardest part. And then building up a base of people, a clientele who would come, advertising and going to put on demonstration games to attract interest. But it sort of took a while to build up, but eventually we got there, and we ran for several years doing that. So it was successful. We never made any money out of it. I mean, we charged people to come along and play because we had to hire the hall. But yeah, it sort of financed itself in terms of cost of terrain. I know it was a good excuse to buy lots of figures as well. It's
perfect, absolutely perfect. And one of the things that I've read, I think it was in your bio, was that you really enjoy putting the scenarios together. And we're going to talk about, there's a lot of that in the Leipzig book that we're going to talk about later on. But in general, at that time, were you putting the scenarios together for the Big Battalions group?
Well, I was doing it in partnership with Jeff Isles. So we would take it in turns to design the scenario. Which was an enjoyable part of it. So basically reading up the history books, producing the army lists, trying to create a battle map, which is not that easy. So you look at a map of some of the old maps of battles, it's not that easy to read the terrain. But yeah, you've got to convert that into a tabletop map. So that was a challenge, but yeah, it's all enjoyable. And then scaling it down to be a playable game within the set time. So if you've got our games tend to be 1 day games, they would scale it to fit 1 day with X number of players. So I think we find with some people tend to perhaps overfill the table sometimes. So if they've got a lot of figures, say, well, let's put them all on the table. I mean, some people like wall-to-wall figures and to have just be able to command masses of troops. But I think if you get a better game, if you've got room to maneuver and to have a result at the end of the day, it's a bit more satisfying and a more interesting game, I think, sometimes, rather than have wall-to-wall figures.
Yeah, it is a temptation for many, isn't it? Oh, I've got a foot there that hasn't got any figures in. Let's chuck a division in and fill it up.
Yeah, and also this false comfort of having your flank protected by the edge of the table.
Yeah, the Flat Earth Society, as we call them.
Yeah, in fact, there was one game I had earlier with the Big Battalions. I think we had about a 21-foot table, and then this chap was looking very complacent. That he on his left flank, he looked very secure at the edge of the table. So it was a friend of mine, actually. So I stitched him up. I put another table on, another board on the edge of the tables. You should have seen his face drop. And so the opponent was able to outflank him.
Oh dear, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Many games, I don't know if you keep up with kind of modern wargaming and different styles. The bigger game dropped out of fashion a little bit. What do you think is the barriers and the reasons that newer players are not converting to the bigger game?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not. I guess I'm not close to the different all areas of the hobby, but I think it's a question of organisation. Imagine, I mean, putting on a big game takes quite a bit of organisation. If you're doing it as an individual, it's quite a lot of work for one person. If you're doing it as a club, it requires quite a lot of coordination. Maybe one person to sort out the scenario, but you might need half a dozen people to bring figures along. So, and if one person doesn't turn up, that can create a problem. So there are some impediments, but I think the upside is it's worth the effort. And I suppose maybe some people who are perhaps used to competition gaming, where it's one-on-one, perhaps they see that as serious gaming and worthy of trying to be the best competition gamer. That's where their ambitions lie. But yeah, different styles for different people.
Exactly, exactly. And if you had some advice for somebody who maybe hadn't done a big game before, what would that be?
I would keep the scale down so that players can manage the size of forces. So, if, for example, in a one-to-one game, you might find that a player can handle quite easily, say, 12 units, being sort of say 10 battalions plus a couple of regiments of cavalry, maybe one or two batteries. So, but if you're playing a big game, because of the interaction, you for the same period of time, you probably want to scale that down to say 8 battalions per player plus cavalry and guns. So work out how many, on average, how many units people are going to have each, and keep that number down, so that because there will be, in a big game, it will, by the nature of it, it will progress more slowly than a one-to-one game, because it moves at the pace of the slowest area.
Player, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's lovely to hear, and a nice little big game chat. Always great to get 15-20 minutes on a big game, and we might get some more in the final section as well, I think. So we'll just take another quick break there, and we'll be back in a second for our features section. Right, everyone, welcome back. And this is normally called the quiz section, but I've changed it to the features section because it just keeps growing and growing. But the first thing we're going to do is the Yorkshire Gamer Quiz. And we always have to stick our disclaimer in that this is how Yorkshire Gamer you are. It's not how right or wrong you are. It's how Yorkshire Gamer you are. Rohan, it's just a yes or no, or one answer or the other. And there are a number of regionally biased questions in it, which clearly biased.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm in Yorkshire and I don't care. So the first question: go big or go home?
Well, go big, of course.
Of course. You don't do much painting, but contrast paints, do you think they're great or a gimmick?
I wouldn't know. There's probably, yeah, I'd say they're worth having. Yeah, go for them.
Worth having. No worries. Unfortunately, another painting-based question, but and regionally biased at the same time. So, paintbrushes, Winsor and Newton, or Yorkshire-made Pro Art?
Well, I wouldn't know, so I'll to win a few brownie points. I'll say Yorkshire Pro Art.
Good lad, good lad. Right, 96 figures. Is that an army or a pike block?
A pike block.
Quite clearly, and a small pike block at that as well. A 6x4 table, is that a big game or a small game?
It depends on the scale of the figures, but it's probably a small game.
Excellent. Nice little caveat there. I like that. Question 6. Points-based army or an historical order of battle?
A historical order of battle.
Excellent. And another painting question, I'm afraid. If you painted, would you use a wet palette or an old bit of MDF to mix your paint?
Old bit of MDF.
Excellent. Still nobody's explained what these wet palettes do. We'll get there in the end. Do you like undercoated figures, black or white?
I used to undercoat mine with black.
Excellent. As all the best painters do. Nod knowing. So you are in a cafe or somebody's offering you a drink. Do you have Yorkshire tea or dirty mucky coffee?
Oh, this is a contentious question here. I mean, you're talking to someone who's born in Ceylon.
No.
Oh,
so that's property.
So now spent many a happy weekend walking in the foothills of the Yorkshire Himalayas, but I've
Yes.
never come across a tea plantation.
It's near Dewsbury. It's near.
Right. Yorkshire Sea. I'm not having it, I tell you. No, I'll have a Tetley's.
Yeah, no worries. Excellent. So war games units. Do you like the figures tightly packed or socially distanced?
Tightly packed.
Right, excellent, excellent. Doing very well so far. Question 11. We're on the back end now. If you've got a choice, would you do a 2-hour club game or a weekend monster game?
Oh, a weekend monster, yeah.
Excellent. Now this is Nick Skinner's question. This is, and it's avocado. Is it just posh mushy peas?
No, there's
No,
nothing wrong with avocado.
I see. I hate to say this, Rohan, but you've increased the avocado stereotype here because we're kind of got an avocado. We on my this is episode 34,
Uh,
and my avocado line is just south of Birmingham. Everyone north of
oh,
Birmingham, mushy
right.
peas every time. So you've not let me down. You've not let me down. And this question, no pressure on this question, but everyone has answered this question the same way. So no pressure. And that's round dice, spherical dice. Would you allow them or ban them on your table?
I'd ban them.
Ban them, yes, 100%. Um, if you were going down the fish and chip shop, the chippy as we know it up here, would you choose haddock or cod?
Haddock.
Haddock, haddock.
Mm.
That is Mr. Marshall from TM Terrain. That was his question.
Oh.
Question 15. Old school. Do you like a good table and a set of rules, like a casualty table, or do you prefer the more modern D6 and you're dead kind of thing?
Oh, well, I would probably the old school combat results table, but depends on the situation. I've used both.
Yeah, no worries. But you don't mind a big table. Certainly a Grand Manor, you haven't got a choice, have you?
Well, yeah, that's yeah.
Next controversial question, and number 16. 28 mil is king, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Question 17. Unpainted miniatures allowed on the table, yes or no?
No.
No, excellent. No controversy there. Now, big question here. I haven't got my Bradford City top on today, but if you had to choose between Bradford City or Leeds United, which one would it be?
Bradford.
The power of persuasion works again. And we're on question 19. And this one is the Yorkshire or the other place over the hill question.
Well, after my grandmother was from Hull, so
They are well. There we
yeah,
go.
so it's got to be Yorkshire. Yeah.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. And the final question: Games Workshop, are they the work of the devil? Yes or no?
They're in league with the devil. Yes, I think they are. Yeah.
Oh,
The
brilliant!
devil has all the best tunes, as they say.
That is true. That is true. And another cracking effort this week from my guest with 82.5%. I gave you half point for the tea question. So you are quite a lot Yorkshire Gamer.
Oh, thank you.
Even though you live in Barnet, you're doing very very well. You're doing very. I didn't knock you any. I didn't knock you any points off for being south of Sheffield.
Right. Yeah.
So count yourself lucky. Now, part 2 of the features section is Wargames Room 101, and George Orwell had his room of horror that was turned into a TV show where guests would try and convince a host that a pet hate of theirs should be confined to the vault. And we've had a few over the episodes. Have you managed to come up with something, Rohan, that's a particularly pet hate of yours? Oh, God.
It's players who don't read the briefings.
Oh,
yeah.
that's a
So
good one.
when you put a scenario together and you've written a small briefing explaining the situation to players, maybe giving them some intelligence about the enemy, a few clues, and a few rules for the day, scenario rules. And often when people, particularly perhaps particularly a big game, they come and they get excited and they want to get straight into the scrap, and they don't read the briefing properly. And then they complain afterwards, oh, you didn't tell us about that. So there'll be people sneaking up on the flank. And that's well, you should have read the briefing, you know.
Well, that is an awesome one. I like that because we do a lot of World War One gaming here in Mesopotamia, and we did a game once that I set up, and the Turkish briefing was very clear, and the table was set up in such a way that we've got a small British trench line and a huge open flank, and the Turkish briefing was to try and push round the British trenches, and they just completely ignored it and went headfirst into the trenches and got machine gunned to death very, very quickly. And they went, "Oh, it's a rubbish scenario. It we're never going to work." I said, "Right, just go and sit down, read your briefing, and come back." And they came back and went, I should have read the briefing, shouldn't I?"
Yeah.
Important life lesson there for everyone listening. Read the briefing. Briefing. And a lot of effort goes into it, doesn't it, mate? If you're doing
so I suppose I learned not to write too much, because I know you learn that people don't want to sit and read a whole page. They want to just get stuck in. So I suppose as a designer, you try and keep the briefing as short as possible, but you do sometimes need to put some stuff in there.
Yeah, and you put a lot of work in to get to that point.
Yeah,
the briefing actually, you've not just done a briefing for a laugh. You've done a briefing to tell people how the game's going to go. So, without any shadow of a doubt, that's going in. I need some sound effects of a vault closing behind me. I'll try and find one. But yeah, that's another one. That's in there with
good stuff.
Our pale blue rivers and all the other things that have got in there. Some of them more controversial than others. We'll just move on to our final part of our features section, which is relatively new. And you probably don't realise this, Rohan, but this is inspired by yourself. Because when I wrote to you or emailed you a couple of 3 months ago now about coming on the show, because I have a huge waiting list. You emailed me back and said, "I'd love to." It's the Wargames equivalent of Desert Island Discs. Is what you said. So a little spark went off in my mind and thought, "Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea for a feature." So this will forever be known as Rohan's Desert Island Wargame. So you have made an impact on this show, young man.
Good.
We are grateful for it. Very grateful. So I don't suppose many people listen to Radio 4 these days, but there is a thing on there called Desert Island Discs, and people come on the show and they choose the favourite records, etc. So I thought that would be quite easy to do for a wargaming sense, and so there's three things you can take, and the first one is a Desert Island game, and any rule set, any period, any scale, any numbers of players. What is your ideal game?
Well, I assumed that I'd be on my own on a desert island, so I would take Empires and Arms, which is the game you mentioned earlier.
Oh, brilliant!
Which is a big game, takes days to play, huge map,
immensely
and, very absorbing. Yeah.
That's a good choice actually, because it is one of those games that you need to be somewhere where nobody's going to interrupt you to actually get it finished. So that is an excellent choice, and of course on Desert Island Discs, everyone gets to take a book in addition to a religious book of their choice. So which book would be the one that you would take?
I think it would have to be David Chandler's Campaigns of Napoleon. So
classic.
Whenever I'm researching
so I'm looking for my copy now. So it's there.
When I'm ever researching a battle, that's the first book I'll go to get an overview of the campaign and a background to the battle. I need to go to other books later to get more detail, but it was so well written and generally reliable source.
Very, very good book. It's mentioned a couple of times on the show before, and I always ask this question: have you actually read it from the start to the finish, or like me, do you actually just dip in and go, "I'm doing Vermeero or whatever," and I'll have that bit?
Yeah, I don't think I've started at the beginning and gone to the end. I tend to, if I'm doing a battle on, say, the 1812 campaign, I'll read that couple of chapters, 2-3 chapters on 1812. And then I might, if I'm doing an earlier battle, I'll read a couple of chapters, 1 or 2 chapters on that period. So yeah, it tends to dip into it that way.
Yeah, I think if you were on a desert island, you'd have that time, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
and you'd go forward and then start and read it all through. I think when I retire, I think that's going to be on my bucket list of things to do. Get a nice cottage somewhere in Scotland, lovely view, nice bottle of whiskey, campaigns of Napoleon on the desk, and off we go. Off we go. I like the idea of that. And then the final one I've put in is a Wargames unit, and I'm not suggesting that anyone breaks into anyone's house and steals any. This is just a fantasy thing. What Wargames unit would you take with you for any period of history? It doesn't have to belong to you. It could be something that has a special meaning to you, or something you've seen in a magazine or played with at the holiday centre.
Yeah, well, it's I suppose my favourite unit at the moment is a regiment of French cavalry, the Carabiniers à Cheval, which is one of the few regiments I had painted for me, beautifully painted by John Gretzer, and nicely based up. So, yeah, that will be my unit to put on the shelf in my desert island.
Is that because of the history of the unit, or how it looks, or how you came about
how it looks?
Is it one of those that just goes boom?
Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely.
And obviously, if you've ever seen the film Waterloo, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
It's French cavalry charge there. It's one of the regiments featured in the film there. They look fantastic. The uniforms, and very impressive.
Excellent. Well, that's a fantastic choice, and a great one for our first Rohan's Desert Island Wargame. Well, thanks very much for that idea. It's a brilliant one. I'm going to have some fun with that.
You're welcome.
Over coming episodes. I just need that little spark. I'm not very good at coming up with fresh ideas, but when I have a tiny little spark, I'm off. And you just can't stop me, which is great. So we're going to take another break for our audience, and then we're going to come back in a couple of minutes' time, and we're going to talk about the Battle of Leipzig and Rohan's new book around gaming that. Well, welcome to the big topic section. And today we're going to be talking about, I know this is an audio podcast, so you can't see this, but I'm just holding the book up to the camera so that my guests can see I have actually bought a copy. And I didn't get it free. Paid for this from my own money.
All right.
This is from Helion Wargames, number 8, Leipzig, The Battle of the Nations, a Wargamer's Guide to the Battle of Leipzig, 1813. And we'll take a deep dive into the book over the next 40 minutes or so. But the first question, really, before we go into that, and it's something we've skirted around a little bit throughout the whole of the podcast, and that's Napoleonics. What is that big draw for you? You clearly... It's the period for you. What is it that draws you to it?
I think it's a colourful period. I like the uniforms, but I think probably more importantly, it's an interesting balance between the different arms, between cavalry, infantry, and artillery. They all play an equally important role in a battle, and I think in later periods, technology tends to dominate. Earlier periods, it's a bit more brutal. The Napoleonic period, there's quite a lot of skill in getting different multi-armed cooperation to win a battle. So those, yeah, I think those are the main reasons.
Yeah, it's one of those periods, isn't it, where it's a bit of a kind of a rock paper scissors deal, where you haven't got one technology that is strips anything else, because you go forward in time from here, and the infantry firepower and the artillery firepower becomes so much that your cavalry effectively becomes ineffective.
Yeah.
And then there is a, because I'm big on the Italian wars, that early Renaissance period is a similar period of time, because you've got these pipe blocks that will smash through everything, but artillery will smash them, but
Right.
cavalry will smash the artillery and any other infantry. So that's very much a rock paper scissors kind of thing. And
Yeah.
is there a particular nation that you are more partial to than the others when you're gaming?
I wouldn't say so. Not No, not really. I'm
Quite happy to chuck your
yeah.
hand in with Russians and Austrians and Brits and
Yeah,
Prussians and
they've each got their, as I was saying earlier, they've got their some national characteristics, but they've each got their strengths and weaknesses. The French are probably good good all round army.
yeah.
It's like the Russians as well, because they've got quite a lot of variety. They've got you can have Cossacks, got powerful artillery. Infantry is not so good, but you've got other stuff to compensate. Good cavalry.
Interesting. And the history of the conflict away from the wargaming side, is that it's something that I think you've said, during the course of this, you enjoy researching the period as well.
Yes, I mean it's in a way it's like a world war. You've got massive conflict, all of Europe involved, spilling over into colonies. So there's always something new to learn about it. When I was doing my MA, I looked at other aspects of the war, looked into the economics of the war a bit. And I did my dissertation on the expedition to Valkyrin. It's spelled, people might know it as Walcherin, but it's pronounced Valkyrin.
Yeah, that second one sounds more like a Yorkshire pronunciation.
Yeah. So an amphibious operation, combined arms, navy and army. Yeah, so that's an area I'd like to perhaps come back to at some point.
And there's still archives that are opening up in Russia, I would imagine, that would have been closed for a while, that maybe English speaking historians haven't had a chance to go through as yet.
Yeah, I think there's more getting translated, more becoming available now. So yeah, that's opening up. Yeah, because most accounts I read of, say, the 1812 campaign have been from the French side. So there's a few bits I've read from the Russian side, but it tends to be individual memoirs, but where you get snippets. But yeah, there's more coming out from the other side now.
So what was your first spark of an idea for doing this book then? Did you wake up one morning in a hot sweat and go, I'm going to do a book on Leipzig? Or how did it
Well,
start?
yeah, I mean, I suppose if you're going to, I was thinking of writing a series of wargaming guides. So
Okay.
why did I pick the biggest and the most complex battle of all time to that date?
I'm nodding my head, which you can't see at the moment, listeners, but
Yeah.
that was my next question.
Yeah. In the big battalions, we did quite a few of the 1813 battles. We did Dresden, Lutzen, but we never did Leipzig. So I thought I'd like to have a go at Wargaming Leipzig. And looking around for a Wargaming guide, I couldn't find anything that was particularly helpful. There was one old book from the 1970s, which was co-authored by Peter Gilder, supposedly, which is out of print, but I found a copy in the British Library. And I can't remember the name of the co-author, but what it is it's a good account of the 1813 campaign, but there's only a couple of pages on the Battle of Leipzig. And the Wargaming guide, bit of it just said that war game rules are available. That was pretty much it.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, Peter Gilder's contribution was to provide some photographs and pretty pictures of his collection, not necessarily related to the battle. So that wasn't of any help. So I thought, well, there's a gap in the market here. So I think I'll write my own. So, well, I put on for my group of friends a mini campaign of the battle. So I did some research and wargamed the campaign. So did most of the battles in my garage, which even with a big table wasn't big enough to do the whole battle in one go. So, but I found that it was readily broken down into sectors. So you can do the western sector around Lindenau as a relatively small battle, standalone, because it's separated by the river. Then you can do the northern section as a separate battle, and then the southern section as a separate battle, and then link it together as a mini campaign. So that seemed to work pretty well. And then we did do one game. A friend had a big barn in Devon, had a massive table. 36 feet by about 18 feet, something like that. So we could do the whole battle on one tabletop there. So we did the final day there. So having run it and having done all the research and having run it as a mini campaign for my friends, well, I thought, well, I might as well document this and produce a guide to help other people do the same. And I was debating whether to include much history in that. So I thought, well, people could read the history by reading other books, but I thought, well, I'll put an introduction in there, a historical introduction. But that tended to, perhaps because I was interested in it, and that grew into a more fuller historical account of the battle, which was more satisfying for me personally to do that. Right, so people have got it all in one book: good historical account and a wargaming guide.
Yeah.
So they don't need to go to another history book to read up about the battle. And I mean, hopefully, I tried to make the history bit as good as I can, so that historically accurate, trying to make it to sort of academic standards, but readable and easy to follow and understand.
Was that a difficult choice to make? I mean, obviously, I've got Napoleon at Leipzig by Nafzinger behind me, which was the go-to book for the battle for me when I was younger, and that's extremely detailed. And some war games guides kind of go, there was a battle and Napoleon was in it and he fought some people from other countries. So there's you kind of deciding how are you going to draw those two lines, too complicated, too simple. Was that a difficult choice to make?
Yeah, I did ponder it for quite a while, but in the end, I put in what I thought would be satisfying. I would be interested to hear feedback to see what wargamers think of it. Is it too much history, or is it about right? But I guess if they're not, also I was hoping that it would be of interest to non-wargamers. So hopefully it's a good account of the battle. So it might be interested people who not necessarily don't want to wargame it, but just interested in the history of that battle. But yeah, I'm sort of waiting to hear back from people what they think of the book. And one of the questions would be, is that too much history or not enough? Or about right?
Yeah, it's an interesting and a difficult one, a choice to make, because I think if it was a Waterloo guide, you can go into any major bookstop, go into Waterstones, and there'll be 5 or 6 books about Waterloo. Whereas information on Leipzig, certainly in Britain, is not as widely available. So you kind of, your knowledge of your audience is less than it would be for Waterloo or Trafalgar, for example. So I can certainly see a benefit of having a more in-depth historical background to it. And it's not a straightforward battle at the end of the day, is it?
No, it's quite a complex battle. You've got obviously it's over several days, and you've got forces coming in from different directions, and there's a bit of politics going on as well. You can't rely on your allies. And international politics, and also personal politics, like Bernadotte. You don't know what he's going to do, whether he's going to drag his feet or whether he's going to turn up.
Yeah, because it's one of the few battles where if you've invested heavily in a Swedish army, everyone's suddenly your friend, aren't they? Oh, do you want to bring your Swedish along? Well, you never normally ask me. Yeah, but just for this game. coming along.
Yeah.
So everyone was involved, weren't they? I mean, even the British had
Yeah,
a rocket troop there, and I think there
that's
was a
right.
couple of officers, like observer officers, there as well.
Yeah, supposedly observers, but they couldn't resist joining in. So
Yeah,
in the cavalry charges, they got carried away and wanted to get involved.
yeah. It sounds very much like a British officer of the early 19th century.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Um, So did you write the book and then find a publisher, or had you pitched the idea and moved on in consultation with them?
Well, I'd started work on it, so because I'd run this mini campaign, I had a fair amount of material to begin with, and I had this idea to publish a guide. But I've always got maybe half a dozen ideas simmering on the back burner, and if you have too many ideas, none of them come to fruition. But I happened to be at a do at the National Army Museum. There was a one-day conference run by the Society of Army Historical Research, which I'm a member. And there's a drink afterwards, and I got chatting to a couple of guys who had just published stuff. And it's quite difficult to get published, unless, particularly in history, unless you're an academic or unless you've previously had stuff published. And both of them were neither academics or had previously published. But one of the guys, he just had a book published by Helion, and I mentioned my idea to him, and he said, "Oh, they're just starting up this series of Wargames guides." And he gave me the contact details of the commissioning editor at Helion, and so I pitched the idea to him.
Was that Chaz?
Charles Singleton,
Yeah,
and he liked the idea. He put it up to his boss, and they accepted. You have to sort of write a little extract and send it up to them to show that you're serious. And they accepted it. So then we agreed a deadline, and that deadline is a big incentive. I think without a deadline, it would be sort of drifting on. So
floating around somewhere.
Another idea that's simmering, but so that's how I got into that.
But you got there, and it's been published, which is absolutely fantastic. Did you how much involvement did you have with choosing photographs, maps, illustrations? I've noticed in this that there's some specific illustrations done for the book of I'm just looking at Russian Grenadier and French light infantry, some sketch drawings. Did you have much involvement in setting that together?
Well, the way it works is that Helion, they commissioned some artwork specifically for the book. So the pen and ink drawings are done by a Russian artist, and then the front cover is done by a French artist who happens to live in Waterloo, actually.
Oh, right, yeah.
Michel Courcelle, I think his name is. So Helion drive that. They sort of pass it through me to make sure I'm happy that, and I had no issues with that. So I didn't see all the pen and ink drawings beforehand, but generally I was happy with the concept and let them get on with that, and they've done that very well. The maps, the way that works is that I drafted the maps by hand and spent some time doing that, and then scanned them and send them across to Helion, who have a cartographer. So George Armstrong,
George Anderson, I think.
George Anderson. So he was the cartographer at Helion, and he put that into a neat format and then sent it back to me just to review. So my review points tended to be on things like the color to make it clearer. So that was a few iterations to get that right. But so I drafted them, and then they put them into a neat format. And then the photographs, I had a discussion with Charles Singleton and sort of how many do you need, and initially I thought, well, maybe we'll have 10, and he said, oh no, let's have 30. That seemed quite a lot, but I think they look good. And then I I was responsible for getting those, and so there's a mixture in there. There's a few which are sort of staged photo shoots,
Yeah.
but most of them are from games. So a lot of them are from games that the game that or series of games that I ran for Leipzig, the mini campaign I ran. So a lot of them are from that mini campaign, either taken by me or friends who had taken photos of those games. And then some of them are, I know that Mark Freeth is very good at taking photos. So he runs the Wargame Holiday Centre. So he kindly sent me some photos of figures and games that he's run. Those are not necessarily of the Battle of Leipzig, but just good games of figures of particular troops who may have been at Leipzig. So he kindly provided quite a few photos, and then I edited that down to 30 to send through to Helion for the book.
Yeah, I've had a good look through, and I think a unit of Prussian landwehr that I painted for the Wargames Holiday Centre is in one of the photographs.
Oh wow!
I'm just going to write underneath your name and Ken Riley, if that's all right.
Yeah.
just for one unit in one photograph.
Oh right, yeah.
This isn't a criticism in any way. It's something we've spoken about before. Some of the photographs are what I would call of a war game in progress, rather than something that you would see particularly in War Games Illustrated, where everything seems to be absolutely pristine, clearly done in a photographic studio, the best possible painting, the best possible terrain. Was that a conscious decision to have a mixture of photographs in there?
Yes. So I mean, one of the two of the staged ones, I thought, well, if you're going to stage a photo, put your best figures in there.
Yeah.
So that's a natural thing to do. But sometimes a photo of an actual game can be more interesting. You can see there's a bit of action going on. It's actually quite hard to stage a photo and get some animation and sort of action. And if you're taking a photo of an actual game, you're not always going to have your best figures in there.
Yeah.
You might have a few dice in the background and a few measuring sticks, but I think that adds to the flavour. It shows that it's interesting to see people actually playing.
I agree with you. I mean, I do a lot of stage photographs for my blog posts and etc. And I do like to see real figures in action, if you like. And I quite enjoyed that about this book, in that it wasn't
good.
It wasn't all the best figures that you can possibly. The pictures that I put out is how you would game at my house,
Right.
and these pictures here are how you would game when you do the battle, and I think that's brilliant. And I love to see all aspects of the hobby represented. So I'm quite, I really do like that. It's very good indeed.
Good.
So you decided to go with Leipzig and not Vermeero or Talavera or something a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
Is it in your mind to maybe do some more of these on? Now you've done the biggest. Everything from here is downhill, mate. It's straightforward.
So I was hopefully, but I've actually started work on the next one. I'm doing a book on two battles, Lutzen and Bautzen, which were a couple of weeks apart. They fit quite nicely together. So I've made a start on that, but it's although it's in some ways it's simpler. You get it's the second album syndrome. You've used some of your best tunes already. And,
you need to get some new ideas in place.
Yeah.
I think there was a NAF singer. Was it Lutzen and Bouncing in the same book? I can't remember.
He wrote somewhere. So that figure is one of my sources for both books. One of several sources.
Is he still with us? I don't know. I don't know whether he's still around.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything published by him recently, but I'm not
all the orders of battle that there used to be a guy who used to go around the shows and you could buy them at 10p a sheet. They're all online now, free in some database in the States. So, listeners, let us know in the comments if George is still around. I really don't know because he did a seminal book on the 1812 campaign that I read from cover to cover, and
Right.
I always love his army lists. I don't. It's so complex, and the amount of detail is just absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic. I
Yeah.
love that side of things. So you're staying with the 1813 count, and Lutz and Bouts are quite popular with wargamers, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, yes, we've certainly staged Lutzen a few times. Bautzen I've done at the Holiday Centre. So Lutzen is interesting. It's an encounter battle. So you've got Russians and Prussians catching the French by surprise, and then Napoleon then having to catch up and rush troops to the battle. He doesn't start there. He arrives shortly later with the guard. So interesting battle. You've got lots of troops arriving, some different directions. So if you've got a good sized table, you can use the whole table because you've got troops arriving from different directions.
Yeah.
Bautzen is very different, a set piece battle where the Allies, the Russians and Prussians, are dug in on a strong defensive position and the French have got to attack. So very different battles and different challenges there.
So going back to the Leipzig book itself, we've talked a lot about the historical background that you've put in there and the level of detail that you've gone into. But the second half of the book is the wargaming section. And how did you decide what was going to go into there? There's you've got a lovely section on an introduction into the battle, and you've got table setups for all the subsequent scenarios. Was it difficult to choose what to go in?
No, because I suppose it's recreating. I've already run the mini campaign, so it was perhaps producing something to a higher standard for publication. Yeah. So the Orbat is. I did a bit of extra work on the Orbat just to make sure the research there is as good as I could. I suppose there's some extra sections there on how to adapt the Orbat for different sets of rules. Yeah. So that involved a bit of extra work. So I actually had to go out and read a number of other sets of rules and just figure out how you adapt the Orbat if you need to for different sets of rules. The terrain and discussions about the terrain, the Orbat, that's all. I guess I'd already done that for the campaign that I ran. The research that I did more research subsequent to running the campaign, so more historical research. So I actually had to tweak some things, which as I learned more, I tweaked the game, both on the Orbat and the terrain.
I mean, one thing that you have included, which is actually my favourite Napoleonic battle, is and apologies for Yorkshire pronunciations, Lieber Voltowitz.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, if that's anywhere near, apologies to
anyone. I'd go with that.
Yeah, close enough. And that's one of my favourite battles because it's just full of cavalry. Yeah. And you describe in the build up to it in the historical section about Murat stuffing his cavalry together in huge, massive columns and firing it towards the Allied lines. Yeah. So I'm really glad that that's in there. Is that a game that you've done a few times yourself?
Yes, in fact, yeah, because that's although it was a very big cavalry battle, it is one of the smaller scenarios which I've done as a two-player game. So because I've scaled it down so that you can do that one is one player aside. So yeah, I've done that a couple of times with a friend, and it's manageable to do with just two players. I mean, it's similar to more similar to what he did at Eylau. He did a massive cavalry charge at the Battle of Eylau, which worked. Probably helped by the snowstorm that was going on at the time. Probably caught the Russians unprepared. But he got he got caught out at Liebert Volkovich because going in one dense column, he got hit in the flank by Prussian cavalry, which broke up his attack. And then once your front rank start routing, it disorders everybody behind you. So he got in real problems.
Well, it's quite clear that he hadn't listened to our previous section of the podcast because he hasn't read the briefing about keeping your cavalry fresh for the big battle coming up. I don't know what Napoleon said to him after. Where's all the heavy cavalry gone? Where is it? It's on that field over there. I've just wasted it all. So you then go in and break the battle down into a number of different scenarios. Was that to make it more manageable?
Yes. I mean, it's not many people are going to have if any, a massive table to fit the whole battle on one table. Although, having said that, I have many years ago did it at the Holiday Centre with Mike Ingham running it, but it is quite difficult to concertina into a smaller space. So it does naturally break down into different sectors, and then which you can fight independently. So that seemed to be quite a natural break.
Yeah, when I've played the game, the whole battle in the past. We wouldn't be able to do it now because our knees wouldn't take it. But we had a hole in the centre of the table where the French players would stand back to back or side to side, and then the battles would go on around this central hole, and we found that even with doing that certainly on the northern flank where I fought on one of the battles, it turned into a one-on-one with the player I was fighting because the forces are manageable. And as we often say with the big battles that we do, I really had very little idea what was going on behind me, which is realistic, really, isn't it? It's what a core commander would be fighting his bit and know nothing about what was going on behind. So I'm just flicking through the book and I'm looking at the French order of battle for the game, and we kind of just mentioned this a minute ago, and we've got 91 infantry battalions and 94 cavalry squadrons and 14 batteries with 51 guns.
It's a huge number.
It's not a beginner's game, is it?
No, but that's the whole battle. Yeah. So if you were doing one section of it, the north, the south, or the west, then you are dealing with smaller forces.
Yeah.
And it is a big battle. It's not. You're going to need it's a club-sized group of people to play it.
Very few people who would have all of it. A guy who's been on the podcast, Robbie Roddis, on number 4, episode 14, I think it was. He built up both sides in 6mm.
All right,
which is one way of doing it. It doesn't have the visual appeal for me personally as the small scales, but it's a cheaper way of doing it. So I understand why. And then the Allied order of battle is 153 infantry battalions, 174 cavalry squadrons, and near enough 20 batteries of guns. And I think you've scaled that down as well, haven't you?
Yeah, that is scaled down. Yeah,
It's brilliant to see because there is, as I said earlier on, there's very much an emphasis on smaller games now, and I understand it, but there are still lots of us, myself and yourself included, who do love that bigger game. And this is the sort of book that I would have loved when I first started, because I wouldn't have looked at that as, oh God, I can't do that. I would have looked at that and go, right, 153 battalions, let's get painting. And then at the end of the year, I've still got 100 to go, but I'm still painting. So I would see that as an inspirational target to achieve.
Right.
And I hope people who read and get this book understand that and play out some of the different scenarios that are involved in that. So the book itself is broken down to, I think I got it right, 6 scenarios. Is that right?
About that, yeah, I think so. Yeah,
you've done it. You've lettered them. So
right.
It's hard for me to count when it's like A, B, C, D. Just in summary, then, how are the scenarios set out? What's in each scenario?
Yes, well, of course, the first one is the Battle of Liebert-Volkwitz, which was the primarily a cavalry battle a couple of days before the main battle, and that's like a standalone scenario. And then you've got the Lindenau section, which is the western side of the battlefield, separated by the rivers, so quite isolated. Then you've got the northern sector and the sub of the main battle on the 16th of October, the southern sector on the 16th of October. And then you've got the second day's fighting. So there was a lull on the 17th of October.
Yeah.
And then the 18th, they recommenced. So you've got potentially another battle on the western Lindenau section, depending on the outcome of the first day. And then you've got the second day's fighting in the north and the south. So those are your sort of separate scenarios, and or you can put the whole lot together if you are able to as one massive battle.
Yeah. So as an individual scenario, then, as like a mini chapter, what's contained within each one of those? Is it briefings, that sort of stuff? What do you get in each one of those?
So for each scenario, you'll get a briefing which will give you which geographic location you're dealing with, an army list, and any specific instructions for that scenario.
And don't forget to read the briefing, folks. And that describes your map and any special rules, doesn't it? Because some of them have, different things that might have happened, or there's random rolls for stuff and victory conditions as well.
Yes, so you've got potentially reinforcements coming on, so there'll be a bit of randomness of when they arrive. For instance, in the northern scenario, on the first day, there was a French supply train trying to reach Leipzig from the north, from Düben. So if they don't reach Leipzig, then Leipzig it's going to be low on ammunition. So there's a penalty if they don't get through. They should be able to get through, but there's a chance that they may have to fight their way through. It's Delmas's division, I think.
So each of the scenarios are individually contained, but you've got that option to go. I'm not going to say go big, because you're kind of going big, aren't you? Because each of the scenarios are pretty big on their own.
Yeah. So they can be played as individual scenarios. Yeah.
We don't mind a big game on this show at all. And the something that I did like was when I was reading through it was you've got quite a detailed section or a big discussion about troop classifications, and it's always a bone of contention, and it starts random arm wrestles between wargamers about what they think their units should be, how they should be represented.
Yeah.
So you've done quite a bit of background work on that and put your thoughts in the book as well.
Yeah, so I did a reasonable amount of research to read quite a few different accounts of the battle and descriptions of the troops. I mean, not going back to archives, but some old sources like Lorraine Petra, who was writing I think he published his book in 1912. It's a good book, but his book covers the whole of the 1813 campaign. So also some of the descriptions of the troop qualities I got from contemporary sources. There was General Charles Stewart, who was attached to the Army of the North, effectively. He was writing home descriptions of the qualities of the troops that he was inspecting. So that was very useful. So, he, for example, his description of the Swedes. And as a horseman, he had a good eye for quality of horses and cavalry, how good they are. So that was one of the sources which was very useful. Also, I mean, I read a book. Dominic Leven wrote a book called, I think, Russia Against Napoleon. Excellent book. That gives quite a detailed description of the Russians and about their training. For example, the Russia had plenty of iron, but it was short of lead. And because it's short of lead, they've restricted the amount of live shot they could train with. So they were restricted to firing like 6 live rounds a year.
Wow.
So they were practicing. So they used to practice with clay musket balls, which are probably not quite the same. Same feeling as firing live rounds. So, and he goes into the different types of muskets. Each battalion were having a mixture of muskets, which caused the ammunition problems. So so there are genuine differences. And on the French side, I mean, the levels of training, all sides had quite a lot of newly raised troops, but some were more newly raised than others. So, for instance, the French, a lot of them may have been, say, new conscripts, but many of them had actually been in the army for 6 months by the time they reached, or more, reached Leipzig, because Napoleon had called up the class of 1813. Napoleon had already started calling up in 1812. So they were already arriving at the barracks in the late 1812. So by the time they're fighting the 1813 campaign, they would have been fully trained on the whole by then.
And I think by the time they've got to Leipzig as well, they'll have fought those precursor battles that we spoke about earlier on. So they're not fresh to gunfire, are they?
Yeah, that's right. By Leipzig, they've been through the spring campaign by then.
So it's going to have a reasonable idea. And you've got some optional rules in the back, talking about the different types of troops and some ideas. A little section there on street fighting as well. So you've covered as much as you can in terms of information for the Wargamer.
All right, good.
Yeah. And then we're just moving on towards the end of the book, and you've actually, and I quite like this, you've put in the historical order of battle to go along with your cut down one.
But just in case someone wanted to expand it.
So I've just moved to the summary of the historical French army, and total 205,075 men, which breaks down into 351 battalions, 355 squadrons of cavalry, and 775 guns. So get painting, you lot out there in podcast land, because once you've done that, it's all right. The Allied one goes on forever. So Allies, 357,119 men, broken down into 462 battalions, 674 squadrons, 1,430 guns. So I dare anyone who wins the lottery to put an order in for all of it to the Perrys in one go. Because that would be amazing. That would be amazing. And then the final appendices is the historical losses, and we vary between 60 and 90,000 for the French, and more stable for the Allies between 40 and 55,000. So that's very large casualties, isn't it? I think I saw somewhere. Did you say that was the second highest compared to Borodino?
I think so. I think it's. I think Borodino might have been the bloodiest in one day.
Yeah.
But I think the cumulative losses of Leipzig, I'm not sure, may have been bigger. I can't remember. But yeah, it was a very bloody battle, not just a big battle, but percentage of casualties was high, and a lot of people captured because the causeway, the bridge was blown prematurely. So there were a lot of French who were captured and left stranded.
And when you compare that, I think I've seen written somewhere that we didn't see those level of casualties again until the First World War.
Yeah.
And when you consider the firepower in the Franco-Prussian War and the size of the actions there, that's quite a
Mm.
big statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
A bloody thing it was. So final question for you then, I suppose, is it's the anniversary of Leipzig next year. And those of you who listened to the previous podcast will have seen me scratching my head for about 10 minutes to work out which scenario it was. Sorry, which anniversary it was. And it's quite easy to work out. So I embarrassed myself. It's the 210th anniversary next year, Rohan, which I'm sure you would have told me. Have you got any plans to play the game yourself next year?
Well, I hadn't thought of it. It didn't occur to me I hadn't realised that it was the 210th anniversary, but
Yeah.
yeah, perhaps I should. But yeah, I was perhaps
It
do
didn't.
at
It
least a
didn't occur to
section.
me while I was working it out. I had 193, and I had all sorts of numbers until I
uh,
finally got to it. But
I
yeah,
should
so
do at least a section of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, excellent. Well, I'm glad. I'm
um,
glad we've maybe persuaded you into that.
yeah.
It's been lovely having you on today, Rohan. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
It's been fun. Yeah.
Um, let us know when your next books are coming out. We have a catch up podcast where I get guests on and talk to them for 40 minutes an hour about the current project. So it'd be great
All
to
right.
have you back on and talk to you about that. And the
Thank you.
final thing is, and you don't have to, but there is an option to ask me a question at the end because I've been firing questions at you for over 2 hours, and I wondered, have you come up with one or have I got away with it?
Well, I mean, because you're through your podcast, you've
Hmm.
got a greater feel of where the hobby is. I feel that something with the games that I play, most of my friends are probably of an age of me.
Hmm.
Do you think there is a danger of young people not coming into the hobby, into particularly historical wargaming, in the numbers that there were when we were younger?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I'd love to be able to tie down the answer. I certainly think we are seeing a crossover from a lot of people. My lad plays Warhammer 40k and Games Workshop and other fantasy-based games, and we are
Mm.
seeing people crossing over with the likes of Bolt Action and games like that are not my cup of tea.
Mm.
The small, the skirmishing, but they're an easy step from Games Workshop to Bolt Action to Cruel Seas to Black Powder, those sorts of games.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that's happening. And then my big evangelical thing, if you like, my glowing tree in the darkness is to get people into big games and to enjoy big games,
Mm.
as we did
Yeah.
when we were younger. We just kind of started at a different point with that historical interest and with
Yeah.
the bigger games as we grew up.
Mm.
So it's happening, and I just think
Good.
that we just need to shout more about it.
Yeah.
Uh, and trust me, I do.
Good.
And it
Yeah.
gets me into trouble every now and again. But there we
Uh,
go. So thanks again, Rohan.
well, thank you for having me.
And if you'd just like to say good night to all the listeners,
Yeah. Good night.
thank you very much. Good night, everyone. And just like that, another show is over. Thank you very much, Rohan, for coming on the show. Lovely chat there about your gaming history and the book. And you can get hold of a copy of that at most booksellers. It's on Amazon, for example. You can also get it direct from Helion, and I shall put a link in the show notes for that. So get big gaming, get your Napoleonics out, and let's have a bit of Leipzig next year. My next guest will need no introduction because I am going to speak to the wonderful and lovely Henry Hyde, who I was on his show not that long ago, and I've met up with him a few times now. And what a lovely guy he is! And Henry's done loads and loads of podcasts, and I know at least one of you out there doesn't particularly like it when podcast hosts speak to other podcast hosts, but I do, and I like Henry a lot, and I'm going to delve deep and give him the full Yorkshire Gamer treatment. So we'll find out what he puts into Wargames Room 101, which will be really, really interesting. So looking forward to speaking to Henry next week and getting the show out. Probably it's going to be in 10 days because I've got two shows to get out before Christmas time. And the second of those shows, after we've spoken to Henry, will be the traditional Christmas brews in the Vineyard episode. And I really, really hope that I will have a full cast. I'm hoping that Alex and Sean will be joining me, subject to any last minute changes. But that would be absolutely fantastic if the old band would get back together. So we will be somewhere in America at 2 o'clock in the morning, wearing sunglasses. Me, Alex, and Sean, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, thanks again for listening and tuning in wherever you are in the world. I wish you all the best. I wish you some fantastic gaming experiences the next time you are, or if you solo game. Thanks for listening and enjoy yourself. What more can I say? Until next time, Sithy.